The question is, what are you pursuing in the sense of vocationally, and I include volunteer as well as job in all that, of what are you wanting to do? That's why we were trying to recognize who are the type of people you like to work with and what would you like to see happen in their lives, and that might define for you the type of job, vocation, or volunteer kind of work that you're doing. Am I making any sense there? Okay. So if we're going to get to this idea of helping you find a purpose, you're going to have to wade through that. You're going to have to say, all this nice stuff, I want dedicated, hard worker, loving, honest, that's all mean. Those really are all the values. You want to be an honest person. Yeah, that's going to define how you get here. I want to be a hard-working person. Okay, great. That's going to define how you get here. This is what we are looking for, though. Now, for some of you, and totally great, totally awesome. I want a family. That's my end goal. I want to have a family that is an enriching family, is a good family. That's fine. Make that then your goal. Well, that's a great purpose. I don't devalue that whatsoever. Great purpose. For some of you, though, having a good family really is a mean value, but that's not your end. Having a good, loving family will be one of the things that will help you get to this end. For some of you, it is the end. Does that make any sense? You said, uh-oh? Oh, yeah. So as we work through some of the rest of the semester, I want you to wrestle with that. Also, and I wrote this on a couple of your papers. I know I don't have them all back yet, but you're going to need to separate a little bit between personal and professional. That's dangerous, but some of you may need to do that. If only for the reason of helping you define the professional. This to me is not as important because I think I can help you develop that into a mean value. What I need to help you do is, what's his professional value? Now, look, and I appreciate the honesty because that's what I asked for, and that's totally good. But when you say, I could stay up all night talking about girls, get it. I do understand that. Okay? Boys, if you're a girl. Okay, just make sure we get... The idea is, yeah, okay, totally. But what you're talking about then is you're talking about you do value relationships or the desire to have a relationship. That's fine, but see, that's still a mean value. What I'm asking you to do is tell me what would you stay up all night talking about outside of mean values? What's a cause that excites you? And I think I told you this when you were doing the assignment. If baseball is something you're totally into, that's great. I would stay up all night talking about baseball. Like I'll stay up all night talking about soccer, but I don't see that necessarily as an end value for my life. It's an interest that drives me, but it's not the purpose that pulls me. Making sense there a little bit? Okay. You need to think through those things because that'll help you in defining some of this. And I know this is a lot about cutting hairs, but that's what a mentor is supposed to help you to do, is try to help you cut those hairs so you can see the differences. Because some of us, quite honestly, we get lost pursuing mean values. And so it takes us on all these little rabbit trails, which are important, but they shouldn't keep us from always pursuing our terminal value, what it is we're looking for at the end. And I will say this, especially if you know Christ, a part of your terminal value is already set. You could begin, because what I want to help you do is write a purpose statement. It's kind of the development of this. So part of it is to honor God. I mean, you can automatically even start writing your purpose statement to honor God. The question is, by what? Does that make sense? So we'll have to wrestle through some of that. Questions? See, I don't trust this. Actually, some of you are making me a little angry. It's the end of the semester. and I noticed this on the last assignment, a number of you didn't read the chapter. You answered the question, but you didn't read the chapter. Totally can tell. Or you're just giving me answers, which is totally fine. That's the way you get the grade. I'm good with that. But I want to do more than that to you, so I really need you to engage the thought. So if you really don't understand or you need more, pursue it. So when I say something like questions, it's not an excuse just to get me to shut up and move on. Questions? Yeah.
It has to do with this, but I can't say it's the exact same thing. My question is how does somebody who sees, so use the example of the home. For some people, the home becomes a terminal value. How does somebody who sees the home as a terminal value perceive someone who sees it as a means? So and that could apply for any value, right? Like if somebody sees it as terminal, but somebody else sees it as a means, is that a source of conflict?
It definitely could be, because somebody could say you're using your family. Right? I mean, in essence, is that what he's asking? I see my family as what I live for. You see your family as something that helps you live for something. Even that in itself helps define a little bit. Right. For me, I love my wife. Part of it has to do, is there a difference in value? To me, there's no difference in value. It is difference in purpose, meaning my mind said, this is just a total line of reasoning here, so I'm going as it flows out of my mouth. I pursued marriage because I knew what my purpose was, and I knew I needed a good helpmate along the way to make that happen. And so I partnered with my wife because we both were running in the same direction, and we just said, let's join up and go for the goal. Does that make sense? I don't think that's any less value than saying, but with the point that what we wanted to do was help educate young people and invest into the lives of young people. But that's the end, was for us to do that. And so we're joined up in that purpose. For the man or the woman who says, I just want a family, we're still doing the same thing in the end. One uses the family as a platform by which to do something. Other people use other platforms in which to enrich their family. But both people value family highly. And I don't think would operate less than that. Difference being this, because a lot of you guys wrote family, is I do have an extended family that, and I'm going to say this out loud, that we more or less have written off because they don't help us pursue the goal that we're after. The other person would say, we will stick by family no matter what, because that is the essential goal that I'm doing. I'll do everything I can to continue to invest. If I didn't have another goal, maybe I would put more time into trying to rectify things with my other side of the family who are not Christians, don't care, are adverse to what our goals are. Does that make sense? And some people will judge me for that. I don't know if that answered the question. So.
This might be a stupid question, but
No.
How are you supposed to have your terminal goal figured out at this point in life? I mean, that just seems like there may be some people that have it, and that's awesome.
Right.
But I think that for most of us, that's going to change as we.
I agree with you.
As we grow.
I do agree with you. I just want you to learn this. So for some of you, you might be able to get out of this class and say, I've got a good feel of my direction. For others of you, I just want you to learn the discipline of what are the questions I should be asking to help me discover that along the way. What I do know is this. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. What I can know is how has God shaped me based on what He has illuminated in front of me right now. I better know my purpose for that period of time. Does that make sense? And so for some of you, it could be graduating. That's my purpose right now, is to be educated and to graduate to fulfill God's desire for my life. That, if you guys, if 50% of you made that your purpose statement for your life right now, and then sought after that, it would totally change your life right now. But what you're doing is that's neither your goal, nor do we have any long-term purpose. So I'm kind of floating, taking the journey, seeing and hoping that it hits me in the face. Does that make sense? So, so I agree. That's hard. Big question for me is, have I been equipped with the right questions to ask as I continue the journey? Because I told you it wasn't until I was in my 30s that finally something clicked. So, yeah.
I can just imagine there being a problem if family is your terminal goal, and then like your kids move out and everyone's kind of moving on, and you're no longer a caretaker, a mother, a father. Like that's not your
Right.
job.
And that's why for people who do choose that, what I will challenge them on is to ask the question. Remember I always ask the why question? This is a great why question. What is the purpose of my family? Because I think that to say that I want to create a home that is welcoming and honors God so that people can find healing, and that, so part of that is to have, I value family in the midst of that. Then it becomes a mean value with the terminal value that we're creating a godly home, which may mean bringing foster children in, short-term people in, family gets redefined a little bit. Yeah, it's a great question. I like that question because I would challenge it. But I like that some people are willing to be honest enough to say, I'm willing to put American expectations aside to say that I really feel like I'm called to be a mom or a dad. And that's a calling on my life. And I can embrace that. I think we should celebrate that more. So, because ultimately, wasn't that the call of God to be fruitful, multiply, have family, and pursue? Good. Other thoughts? You want to call him Clark? What's up, Clark?
Yes. What if he wants to be a mom?
Well, then I say, get arrested, go to prison, because then we have to pay for your hormone treatments. At least according to what the news says right now. So, get the ball rolling. All right, moving on then. I'd like to get back into this followership question. All right, and today what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about defining what we mean by follower or followership. And bear with me a little bit, and I want you to engage again with questions for our online audience. We'll maybe get some questions and discussions, and I'll make sure I get those out to you as we go through this. So we talked a little bit last time that right now in the idea of our culture, follow is kind of badly translated. Badly defined. It's low level, it's mindless following kind of thing. Well, and I've talked about this briefly last time, you do understand that concepts like love from other classes, like when you say love, you really mean multiple things, don't you? Let me see your great education at work here. When we talk about love, what it might encompass. Strong feelings of affection, yeah. But see, if I say, I love pizza, and I say I love my wife.
Same thing.
Same thing. Makes for strange nights, I'm going to tell you. Okay. I get you. It's gross. Making love to pizza would be a bad thing, so come on, yeah. All right. So what do we mean then? What are we saying? Love. Enjoy. What'd you say? Okay. So no one in your churches, youth groups, school talk to you about like agape, storge, philia.
We just haven't gotten there.
Oh, you're getting there. Eros. From the Greek, we know that there's at least 4 levels of love, or 4 types of love and so for the English, for us in our English language, we say love. So for love, we know there's agape, which is like ultimate love. We know storge, which is kind of companion love, philia, brotherly love, and we know eros is like sexual love or physical, erotic love. All right, so we understand that. What's missing a little bit in our own language is the same thing with this idea of follow. You say follow, you kind of have to look to the context. A gosling follows its mother is different than I follow the president, or I follow Aristotle. What's that? I follow pizza, did you say? Yeah. See, it's all nuanced, okay? Now, what I want to do is really quick just show you some ideas relative to this idea of follow from at least from a Greek perspective, so you can kind of see how this develops. At its root level, the core word that's used all throughout, at least through Scripture, is this word here. It's used 77 times in the Gospels, and only one place else. And it's always used to describe this idea of a disciple. So I'm following Jesus. That makes sense? And that's the kind of the context. I follow Jesus. I use this kind of designation. Now what's interesting is we find a number of other types of follow, though, that are used by the same writers. So these same writers just didn't use the same word follow every time. They said there's nuances to this idea of someone who follows. Let me be totally honest. I am totally contriving this order. These are definitely different words, and you can find them in Scripture in the Greek, but how I'm ordering them, that's just based on my own research and my own presumptions and assumptions. Does that make sense? So I want to be totally frank and honest with you at that. Well, I want to be Lenny and honest with you, not Frank, because it's somebody else. Okay. A lot of what Greek language deals with is how the preposition starts the word. So if you take the root word and add kata to the front of it, which is one of the variations, that's a word that's used to talk about follow. But when we talk about it there, really what we're talking about is this idea that it's like it's a drive to follow, almost a reaction to something, and I had to follow. We see it used, if I would put it into a modern context, I heal Jason, and you're like, oh, I want to go see more of what he's going to do. Does that make sense? And so I follow him. So it's reactive. There's not much thought to it. There's not much commitment between the two people. I don't even need to know you. You just follow. Does that make sense? The woman at the tomb, I think that's one of the places it's used in Scripture. They followed Joseph of Arimathea to the tomb. It could have been anybody they would have followed to the tomb, but they were emotionally charged to go see where Jesus was laying, and they just followed. Does that make sense? And so when we talk about it, how we talk about followership, sometimes you just follow because it's like a natural reaction to follow. You kind of do mindless following. You walk into a line and the line is just moving in a direction. You just assume you follow. You're just reacting to the moment, to the flow, to the direction. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's definitely that type of followership. And we want to be aware of that effect on our lives. Now, the next level is to go what we call eka. K-A. Eka. And here we're describing more of imitation. I imitate somebody else.
What's the difference between that and about the line?
About the what?
About the line that you described.
Probably that there's more of a natural cognition that I'm imitating. Like I see what you do and I want to do it, rather than I'm just following because I'm reacting to a moment. It's mindless. I don't even think I don't even know I'm necessarily following. More or less.
Okay.
Yeah. That makes sense? Yeah. So this is I'm imitating. I like the teachings of Jesus. I'm going to imitate those. You know, there's a lot of Christians that do what Jesus did. They don't have a relationship with him whatsoever. They just do it because, hey, that made sense. And some of you do the same thing in your own. You imitate. You follow. You wear certain brands because you're just imitating what other people do. Now, other people wore it. I do it too. All right. I think about it. I realize that. Like, I don't wear Nike. Sorry. You know, I wear Adidas. You know, I'm a brand follower. You know, does that make sense? So, Nike's evil. Don't you know that? Yeah, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it some other time. So, nothing against you. All right. Next level is we deal with it's called EPA. And again, we're talking about nuances of differences here many times. When we talk about EPA, what we're talking about here more is there's a commitment of behavior and a consecration of the will. This is a commitment of behavior. I imitate by behavior. This is I imitate behavior, but I also consecrate my will. I dedicate myself to something. I may follow here multiple. I follow Jesus, so I follow Muhammad, I follow Joseph Smith, I imitate behaviors. Here, I'm more or less I'm consecrating myself to the teachings of so-and-so, and I'm imitating and emulating those. Does that make sense? Yeah. I use the word consecration. If I imitation, consecration, if I were to separate the two. So I am replicating the actions, but I'm also consecrating my will to them. Sometimes, like even what you ask, again, this is one of the nuances. I can imitate behavior almost without even really thinking through it. Just because I'm imitating a behavior. This is like, I want to play ball like he plays ball, and I'm going to imitate my behavior and study the way he does it, and I'm going to model myself after so-and-so. That's more of an EPA type relationship. Does that make sense? But you're still following, okay? Then we get into para. And we move into this para. This more closely describes a relational connection. You can almost say that there's kind of an imaginary line. If, again, I'm contriving the order here. All these words exist, but I'm contriving an order. Kind of an imaginary line to now it becomes personal. There's a relational connection between the follower and the leader. Though it can also be used, para, in the idea of following a philosophy. But even then, I kind of have a relationship with the philosophy. I don't just recognize it and want to emulate it and follow it. I want to embody it. I want to have a relationship with it. Does that make sense? And usually with this idea of para, it's the idea that I want to be with. Actually, if you translated the word or used the preposition itself, it's actually the word beside. So I want to come alongside of. Does that make sense? Yeah. If I translated some of these out, let me give you some examples. After Eka is played out and build upon. There's kind of different ways of seeing it. The words, these are what the words kind of more or less mean. So I just follow after. That makes sense? I just go. I follow after. This is, because I follow after, this plays out. So it's an imitation. I follow after, and so I do. This is, now I know it, I'm reflecting, and I'm building upon it. This is almost that praxis idea. This is now I want to come up alongside you. I just want to watch you, think about what you do, imitate what you do. Now I want to actually walk with you. Come on, side by side. Does that make sense? Which then brings us to the root word, which is follow. which is this relational discipleship side. So it's beside, but it's kind of rubbing off on each other. The Greek word that's used when, I think it's Matthew, talks about Jesus was spending time with his disciples. This is where you need Greek. The word is actually that Jesus was rubbing off on his disciples. It's actually the word. It's diatribe, which is totally different than spending. I spend time with a lot of different people. The idea, though, that they were rubbing off on each other, because you could say that, like some of your mentor relationships, some of the responses we were talking about with mentorship. Okay, so you got to spend time with someone who you like to be a mentor. Well, that's great. But what you're going to catch is kind of the crumbs off their table. It's different to say, I spent time in the sense that person rubbed off on me. Does that make sense? That takes it to a whole different level. And so here, I want to walk beside you. Here, I want to get in your life. All right? Now, there's another level. Oh, go ahead.
So, have you ever heard the expression, hang out with people who do what you want to do?
Yes.
So, that would be a good example of, because they're going to rub off on you. They're going to be the ones that,
But that happens here.
Okay.
They rub off on you. I'm talking about, again, look at the evolution of what's happening in the relationship. I'm just not watching what you're doing and imitating it or thinking about it or walking beside you. Is now you're challenging me, I'm challenging you. We're in this ongoing sharpening swords relationship that Psalms and Proverbs talks about, wisdom literature talks about. Iron sharpens iron. So that help a little bit? Okay. Now, Larry and I, in our discussions, Larry Anderson's another professor at the college, we are going round and round because there's one other word that's used. It's only used twice in the New Testament. In our conversations, it's interesting because we're talking about a de-evolution of a word, and I know that you guys are like, who cares? This kind of stuff gets me excited, though. Okay, you understand. Meaning there's another word that was used in Greek culture, and it's interesting the way it's applied in Scripture. All right? And that is a root, and I'm going to do it as another step. It's the root called suna. And when you deal with suna, you're kind of taking, let's see if I got the root translation. Oh yeah, it's the word with. Suna, with. I'm arguing, or at least researching, that this probably describes more than any other what we're talking about with followership. Now, it's unfortunately only used twice, so it's hard. I have to build the argument. But it definitely moves beyond this idea of a side-by-side relationship or a partnership. The word is many times talked about an intimate personal union with another person. Close partnership. No, that's a different word. Yeah. No. But let's recognize that many times that word is used talking about a successful relationship between a leader and a follower. We have a good marriage. And they're talking about wedding marriage. They're talking about we have a good relationship. Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
Where in the Bible, in what context?
The two times, let's see, test me if you would. No. It's all New Testament. Hebrews is I'm not going to get into that today, but there's Hebrew words that are used here as well. The women that followed Jesus, it's talking about a relationship, and it's describing the relationship the women had in following Jesus. So it wasn't just that they were just disciples, but there was a close union of this group of people to Jesus' ministry. So they were beyond just disciples, they were friends, kind of thing. I'll have to find out where the other one was. I can give you specific references if I put this. I have it on paper. I don't have it in front of me. So, but it's kind of interesting as we begin, because now let's take it. part of what we do here is talking about fit for and discipleship and all that kind of stuff. You can definitely see, again, contrived, but this idea of what does it mean when I say I follow Christ? I'm a follower of Christ. Really? What do you mean by that? Do you love pizza or do you love your wife? Which love are you talking? When you say follow, what are you talking about? Is it nothing more than the fact that they were serving pizza at youth group? I love pizza. I'm going to keep coming back. Because this is the kind of thing, remember at the mount, all these people were at the mount, he did the miracle, bread and, fish and then Jesus said after that, if you want to follow me, eat me and drink my blood. Gone. 12 people left. A mountainside of people, multitude, thousands left. Gone. Why? Miracles are done. Now you're talking about commitment. That's a different type of followership. Does that make sense? So I could say, I follow. I follow. And as long as I keep getting the miracles, I'll continue to follow. Because that's what motivates me. The moment. Does that make sense? There are some who I follow because I recognize that living the way Jesus lived, living the way the Gospels are laid out, he was a wise teacher. He's got good things to say, and if I imitate his lifestyle, life is good. I got that. There are people that's your level of followership. There are people who, on the idea of, I want to study not just his behaviors, but who Jesus was. What did he think? What was his theology? What was his philosophy? I want to consecrate myself, not just to the behaviors, but to the ideals of what Jesus was trying to do. Does that make sense? And that's where this line is drawn even within our own personal discipleship. Because there's a lot of people that follow Jesus but don't know Jesus. Does that make sense? Because that to me is really the deciding factor here, is the issue of know him. To say I want to walk side by side, that means I need to make a commitment, not just to your teachings, not to you as a far-off ideal, not to you as something that lives but I cannot know, but I want to know you and make you known. Does that make sense? So you got to ask yourself that same question. Where am I at? And then this, which is the root of what following should be, is this discipleship relationship. It is that give and take. It is the mentor relationship. Very interesting to me that in our description of mentors, a few of you caught on to the idea that I actually see Jesus as a mentor because I actually am engaged in a relationship with him by which he is teaching me something. Not just the Word of God, but the Word himself. And that's a question. Can I say that I'm a disciple of Christ? Am I a follower of Christ? When we look at it from the Greek sense, it literally is used to describe someone who is a companion and going in the same direction. Does that make sense? Not just going in the same direction, but as a companion to that. And then to me, which is really the big question next, is that level of intimacy. Kind of what you just read about, which is level 4 leadership. Do you walk with Jesus, but Jesus is the one that has to give you your marching orders each day? I'm a disciple. He tells me to go preach here, go preach there, go do this, go do that. Or have now I digested the gospel where the Spirit's living in me and I'm partnered with him in ministry. If anything, the Spirit has to stop me from going places like he did with Paul, not tell me to go places. Does that make sense? Interesting questions. Now, I do all that just to give you some background of what we're talking about when I talk about followership. This might help you begin to say when we see the word follow, or we see the word follower, or we see the word followership, don't just assume something. You must look to the context of what's being said to understand. When I say I love my wife, you need to look to that context and understand what is he talking about. So when we use the word follow, as we continue through this process of looking at some of this, you really need to look, what are we talking about here? Does that make sense? Questions? The moment of happiness when no one says a thing. Okay, so engage in intellectual exercise then with me for just a moment. Based on what we were just talking about, let's use the cultural definition and let's use kind of the root or the SUNA level on this idea that of followership. What do you see, based on where you're sitting now, and some of our online students who are actually probably going to engage into discussion on this in their discussion boards, what do you see as the differences between someone who follows and someone who engages in followership? I'll give you a second to think through that. And maybe to help you out, like, let's see what you got.
I think it's like you were talking about earlier with the different levels of the following, like you're with or you're alongside. Follow is just kind of that mindless, I see what you're doing, I want to be part of it, or just I want to see more of it. Where followership is more the intimate connection and you want to be with them, or you want to learn from them and walk alongside them.
And that's a great answer. The problem is I don't have enough room. So the question will be, how can you say, if you had to put it in a word or two, are we talking behind and with? Okay, that's what I'm asking you to kind of, let's see if you could create some comparatives. If you do this right, when I write the book, I'll be able to put you guys' class and year in as my resource to pull this from. So,
Following, there's no commitment. With followership, there's a lot of commitment.
okay, so we say no to low commitment. That's good. And this is high commitment. Good.
I think you have to take it a step up though and recognize that it's all of this falls underneath the vision.
Great, right.
The relationship, it's not just a personal relationship. The relationship is because of the vision.
Yes.
You become committed to the person because of the vision. So somebody on the follow side is just doing because they're doing, because it's on their job description, because they were asked to. Somebody on the followership side knows the vision, understands the vision, and is committed to the person because of the vision.
Sure.
It's at level 4, level 5, Brady Woodward, right? You're committed to the vision of that person has casted.
Okay, good. I like that. And actually, he brings up an important point, and I hope you understand this. When we talk about leadership, I'm going to rabbit trail here again, because this is what I naturally do, this is not a question of the, let me see if I describe it. Here's the leader, and the follower orbits the leader. And I'm going to draw with me the planets and everything I need to create my solar system and my control. The idea is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, is kind of what you're saying here, is that what we have is a vision, and what we have is a reciprocal relationship by which the follower and the leader work together around this vision. And the vision becomes the definition of what synergizes us. Does that make sense?
Because the vision is what lives on. The person doesn't, right?
Right.
You know, it's the vision is the legacy that's passed on. That's why we remember people because of their vision.
Sure.
And their vision becomes their legacy.
And see, now, this is, again, we talk about this leadership and servant leadership issue. One reason is that, I love what servant leadership in essence is trying to get across. One of the issues, though, is when you say serve people so they follow you, what you're doing is you're putting yourself back into the center. People will follow you because of what you're doing for them. When I think the real call is that I'm going to try. You quoted Kouzes and Posner in your last book. Have you read the whole book?
No.
Okay, great read, Leadership Challenge. Hopefully I'm going to cover it by towards the end of the semester. People online, I think they've already done it in another class. They talk about the essential qualities of a leader. Honesty, and so on. One of the key things, though, that is different, and I'll talk about this more next time, one of the key differences is that a leader is forward-looking in the idea that they are a visionary. They embody the vision. And so when we're talking about this idea, servant leadership says, you serve so people follow you. When we're talking about real leadership, we're talking about what the leader does is she so casts the vision which in such a way that it excites everyone around the vision. So my job as a leader is not necessarily always to be kicking the butts of my followers. It's giving them the vision enough that they are motivated to seek after that vision. And what they're seeking is the guidance on how to do that, which gets us path goal theory, which is my job as a leader is to remove the obstacles so they can get there. Does that kind of make sense? So great insight, and you're right, because I think once you lose sight of that, and some of you clued into this with that Leadership 3 and Leadership 4 level issue that's out of the book you guys are reading. If you think it's about you becoming a great leader so that people follow you, you got to rethink the idea of what it means to be a great leader, in the idea that being a good leader is really about knowing how to articulate a vision and getting people excited about a vision. Because I think the followers will take care of themselves. You will attract good followers when you have a good articulate mission or vision. Yeah.
And I think I think this ought to be a relief from a Christian worldview, because it keeps the leader out of the main focus. Because the main focus becomes the vision, not the leader.
Now,
and so it creates a dynamic where the leader is not the focal point.
I totally agree. Now let me give a pushback on that. I don't want to challenge the thought. I want to take what he's saying and extend it up a bit. That's one of the main reasons why I think people do not engage Christianity anymore. We've lost the vision. The vision is about church attendance, not about a gospel. We've lost that somewhere. And so what we do is we try to hire leaders that we need a new leader. We need a new leader. Now, it could be what they're saying is we need a new leader to help us supply some good vision. But many times it's just we need someone who can preach really good or lead worship really good, because that'll attract people. Does that make sense? And the truth is, if we could re-engage the mission of Christ, it's going to attract followers. Why did the church grow so dramatically for so long? Well, it's because there was a mission, there was a vision, there was a purpose, there was a reality to this thing called the gospel. And as leaders, our job is not to make ourselves look better, but to amplify the mission of Christ. And by overflow, because we're following after it, we are improving our skills to be better prepared to be leaders in the situation. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Would you then say that followership, the person wants to contribute to the vision, and then just following wants to just be part of the name?
You could say, get paid, pay in. Right. I follow because you're going to reward me for it. I want to reward the vision for it. That might be a good way to put it. I'll put that down in my notes.
Kind of like a mindless drone versus an enthusiastic partner.
Yeah, this is almost, I don't know what the other side would be. Zombie to Rick? To what? Who's Rick?
He's a leader.
He's a leader. Rick. There we go. Rick. There we go. I don't know who Rick is, but Rick is the man. So, all right. That's enough for today. I'll see you guys next time we get together.